So I see some people trickling in. That's good. And Cindy, you just take the cake for your, is that a virtual background or is that real life?
It's the real deal. Can you smell it?
Almost.
Yeah, it's the real deal. It's actually getting, I'm in the basement. It's getting a little smoky, but it's not the greatest draw. Sometimes it's fine, but right now it's a little smoky.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was fun. Yeah, that was smooth.
That was a lot of fun.
Uh-oh.
I see some people trickling in. That's good.
We got feedback trickling through here. Somebody might be watching the live stream.
Is that a virtual background or is that real life?
It's the real deal. Can you smell it?
Almost.
Yeah, it's the real deal. It's actually getting, I'm in the basement. It's getting a little.
There we go. I think, is that David? I think you might have the live stream on or somehow I muted you momentarily because I think I heard the delay coming through. So we can get started here. Thanks everybody for joining us. I mean, first of all, just like give yourselves a big hand for doing some amazing work. First for the amazing anthology, which is just incredible. I'm so happy we had a chance to celebrate that and to continue to kind of extend it, right? To like extend the work. But then to the filmmakers that participated. Really appreciate your hard work, and I'm going to go around and maybe have folks introduce themselves. So I think most folks are muted, so feel free to just like unmute yourself. And I'm just going to kind of go around the horn here. I think we got David up in the left corner. So go ahead, David, and introduce yourself.
Okay. Alt plus A.
And let us know which piece you worked on.
Who's talking?
You're live. You're with us. I'll keep moving here. ML.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. I really liked the way that these poems were, interpreted or reinterpreted with film and by other readers in some cases. I love the the outside shots, the archival footage. I love that. So yeah, I thought it was great. It was absolutely incredible. I'm gonna make all my creative writing stuff, make movies. That's all we're gonna do.
Is that David?
Great.
Yeah.
So you want to introduce yourself and let us know which piece you worked on?
David or me?
Sorry, I moved on. ML, let us know which poem did you have in there?
It was the poem, which also was really incredible. I don't know where Olivia dug up that archival footage of the Falcons. I've never seen that before. But it was the Rhythm and Fire. I forget the name of the whole title, but Rhythm and Fire, and it was about the Falcons, Sir Mac Rice, and it was based on late 50s Detroit group that had Eddie Floyd, Sir Mac Rice in it, and others. I'm blanking right now. Oh, Wilson Pickett. And I just thought it was really great how they put it all together. And so I need to know where that archival footage came from so I can use it in my classes. I've never seen that.
I wish Olivia could join us. Her mom's birthday.
Yeah, go ahead.
Couldn't have her with us, but we'll have to ask her.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that, Cindy.
Yep.
Amelia, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Amelia. I I did Ken Meisel's poem John Lee Hooker's Spooky Chillin'. Is there any other information? I'm a senior, graduating next Saturday, headed to grad school. So
Congrats, Amelia.
thanks.
Yeah, I really like that one. I love the animation and the colors, and just the whole thing seemed very avant-garde, but very earthy. I like that a lot. That was good.
Thank you.
So Joe, why don't you tell us a few words about your piece?
I'm Joe Johnston. I did The Last DJ by Glenn Armstrong. I wish he was here tonight, but I don't see him.
Fantastic work.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. The whole program was great.
What a blast it was to see that all together too, all in one concise program. Marcus, you want to tell us about your piece?
Hi, I'm Marcus. I worked with Jim Daniels on Detroit Hymns Christmas Eve. I don't know if I have any specific things to say about it right now, but I'm happy to answer questions. But good job, everybody. I loved the variety in the pieces tonight. There was a lot of range, so that's really good.
Sure were, yeah. I have a question, Marcus, but we'll get back. Let's hear the introductions first here.
So Jim, you're next for on my screen. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jim Daniels. Did the anthology with my pal ML, and I had the poems Detroit Hymns Christmas Eve that Marcus did a great job with, and the surprise one was the Eddie Smith one. I didn't know that was happening.
That was cool. I really liked it.
Yeah,
That was
I want to thank Peter and Cindy for putting all this together, and for all the filmmakers. I've been involved with films before, and I know how much work just watching these. It's incredible. I'm blown away.
Thank you, Jim. Michael. Michael. yourself?
Greetings. I am Michael Lachlan. My poem was Raptor, and I was delighted with hearing the reading of it in particular. I liked the way it was put together. I liked the visuals. It was I had no idea what to expect, and I was quite happy with the result. I hope the filmmaker was happy.
Fantastic. Aileen, you're next.
Hi, I'm Aileen. I'm a senior at MSU. My one I worked on was River Rouge, which was a lot of fun. It was a really great poem to get to work with.
And you did a fantastic job. That was so great.
Thank you.
Garrett, would you say a few words about yourself?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm Garrett, and I worked on the memorial in open air, and I am a sophomore at MSU, obviously. But yeah.
Thank you, Garrett. Norman.
Hi, I'm Norman, and so I worked on the Raptor by Michael Lachlan.
Great, excellent.
That's very good.
Let's see. You're labeled as Maggie. I'm not sure. I know the gentleman with the red hat.
Oh, is that me?
That's you.
I don't know why it's showing up as Maggie. Maggie's my daughter, but anyway, I'm not Maggie. I'm Robert Fanning, and I just my poem was Memorial in Open Air. And Garrett, it's so great to meet you virtually. Anyway, great job on that. It was beautiful. I loved hearing and seeing Blair beneath my words read by whoever read them. I don't know. Was it you, Garrett, reading it? Yeah, it was really beautiful to hear Blair, his spirit beneath my words. So everything was absolutely awesome. Thanks everybody for a great job.
And finally, Charlie, can you introduce yourself for us?
Oh, is it me? I don't know why it's showing up as Maggie. Maggie's my daughter, but anyway, I'm not Maggie.
You might have the YouTube video playing at the same time, Charlie, which might be causing some feedback.
Oh, what am I supposed to do?
If you keep open this Zoom window, then we can all chat in here, and then the folks at home can watch on YouTube.
Oh,
That might solve some of the feedback problem.
okay. Am I still on? What am I on here?
Now you're on. We can see you.
Is that you?
Yep.
Oh,
Tell us about your piece in the anthology.
well, it was just about, actually, it was about what I used to do. When I was young, I was in a soul band called the Kansas City Soul Association, even though none of us were from Kansas City. We were all in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we had 4 black singers and 4 white musicians. And we were really good. And we played all over Colorado, and we played in all over Wyoming. And this was a weird time because black people and white people weren't supposed to be sharing cigarettes on a stage and doing all, at least in these kind of backward places that like Cheyenne, Wyoming, for instance. And we broke down a lot of barriers. We integrated some places in over the line in Colorado. Remember having to step over a big pile of dog poop for about 3 weeks while we were playing in a dive in a little town and over the border of Wyoming and Colorado. Anyway, so it was about setting up a drum set. And I still have that drum set upstairs. It's the exact drum set that Ringo Starr used. It is a Ludwig Oyster Pearl drum set with Zelgin cymbals. And I still play it every now and then when I get that kind of wild hair,
Nice, fantastic. So I'm getting some questions. And Cindy, do you want to jump in here? Do you want to start with a question?
Sure. Well, I have a few, but I'll start with one that might give many an opportunity to jump in and help us think about. It was interesting for me to consider the various and varied use of archival footage and new footage, and then the differances between the black and white footage, which was sometimes archival, but sometimes just a treated, an aesthetic choice of somebody made for present day footage. So it's interesting to think about the difference between the black and white footage and the color footage, and how and why those choices were made. Like Aileen, for example, you use both, and the film ends with color, and the poem ends with this word, hopeful. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how intentional that was. And then, well, Nancy Rodwin isn't here, but one of the things that I thought was interesting about Nancy's film is that she's treating the past mostly in color. The father is treated in more sepia tones, but the past is mostly in color, and the present is black and white, which is kind of a reversal of expectations. So I think it's interesting, particularly for this kind of project in which we're wrestling with history, to consider why black and white is chosen and why color is chosen, and how those choices affect the way we feel, we experience the film. Maybe none of that was even heard. Could you hear
No,
it?
I heard it.
Okay.
You got it. Go ahead, Elise.
Yeah, I heard it. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Dave Cope. It's my poem. Hopeful in the end is the whole idea of Detroit. I can't remember how the city's motto is, but it will always rise again. And the poem was really, it started out as a comment on one painting, and wound up going towards the Diego Rivera painting, and we wound up looking at the assembly lines and what it did to people, and my family started creeping into it, and it really becomes the history of Detroit from 1930 to about 1980 or thereabouts, and my family's place in it, and what my father and the people in his neighborhood were. I mean, it was a really poor neighborhood, but a lot of people rose to great heights in it in terms of their jobs. But at the same time, there was that sense of you're going to get knocked down again and again, but you're also going to get up. You have to be hopeful. It has to end on that word. I want to thank Eileen for the work she did on the thing. And I'm very happy about it overall. It was read a little too fast, but other than that, I can live with it. It's just fine. Thank you very much for this entire experience. I thought the whole festival was wonderful.
Thank you, David. Aileen, do you want to speak to the archival footage, the color versus black and white?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So my big use of black and white was the second section, which was footage I shot and then made black and white. It just kind of helped set it off between the other two sections and kind of gave it this kind of timeless quality. I was using some neighborhoods here in Lansing to stand in for some neighborhoods in Detroit. So kind of making it black and white kind of made it feel a little bit more like it could be anywhere for me, at least. And then later on, I did use some archival footage, which influenced, even though I don't use a ton of it, it influenced a lot of my video. It helped me kind of decide to use more of a square aspect ratio. I didn't want to have that footage stand out, so I made my whole video kind of fit that archival footage. And it was kind of that interesting thing of when you don't have color, it's kind of a lot of it too then is really grainy and a little bit harder to make out. So then to kind of again match that, I added a film grain effect over the whole video, which is a little subtle, but kind of just help it all kind of fit in and flow together.
I had a question come in that was about process, about how we match filmmakers and poets and poems together. So I can speak a little bit to it that it's a huge anthology, right? There's so much great work in it. And Cindy and I sort of at first gathered a large group of poems that we thought would be especially suited to film. And then we sort of, to make it easier for students, filmmakers to kind of sift through, we sort of came up with 3 or 4 poems for each of them to pick. And then we presented those filmmakers with that small subset of poems. Do any of the filmmakers want to chime in about how they, what stood out to them about the piece they chose? Go ahead, Joe.
I took one look at The Last DJ, and I knew that it was the one I had to do. It resonated so deeply with my experience listening to jazz on the radio at night. It was as if, he was talking about my youth and my ears opening up to jazz music for the first time through the magic of radio. And when I moved down here to Detroit, Ed Love was just a revelation. His sonorous voice and vast knowledge, it was just something I fell in love with. So I took, I read it once and I said, that's the one I have to do. I looked at Jim's poem too about the White Castle, and I really wanted to do that, but I didn't think I had the time or crew to make it happen. It was such a cool poem, but I didn't think I could do it justice. But yeah, that's my story anyway.
Any other filmmakers want to talk about like specifically what kind of stood out to them about the poem they chose? I've got plenty of other questions here. I'm going to go to there's a question about the first steps filmmakers took as they were working to interpret and analyze the poems. I'm going to ask Amelia, like you ended up on animation as your format. What were some of the first steps you took in analyzing the poem and interpreting it? And then where did you make the leap to animation?
Yeah, so I honestly, I went to animation kind of before I even like decided on a poem, because I don't have a car and I live in East Lansing, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get to Detroit to get the shots that I wanted. This was actually the first time that I had done anything animated that was longer than like 10 seconds. So it was really, really daunting for me to do that. But what helped was Ken Meisel's poem is broken up into 3 stanzas. And so it was much easier to go, okay, so the first stanza, here are all of my ideas for the first stanza. Here's the second stanza. I can, come up with all of these ideas for the second stanza. And I kind of just like drew it out beforehand, just kind of like sketching, and limped my way through After Effects.
Well, I mean, through like finding your way through a new technology and a daunting task, this was a great inspiration. I think it really turned out good. You should be proud.
Thank you.
Norman, you decided on this kind of interesting format as well. That was this superimposition of footage over a speaker. So like, how did you interpret this poem and what led you there?
So firstly, when I look at the poem, I searched searched some information from the poem, like the music you mentioned and like other stuff, and then which gave me some of the inspiration. Also, just when I look at the poem, I really felt the a sense of airiness. I would say that, but so I decided to do to record footage of the sky like in the morning, and then I like in the process of making the film, I actually project the footage over this the speaker in a recording studio, so it's like a white screen behind that person.
Yeah, I thought that was really successful, sort of melding of image and speaker in one frame.
Yeah.
Garrett, your piece is like so strongly influenced by another poet, right? There's like a melding of poets. So what was your process there interpreting that?
Well, the process kind of went through a bit of a metamorphosis, because at first read of the poem, I was going to do like the entire city of Detroit, like all the different places that Blair interacted with, like Detroit Public Schools, the Ruth Ellis Center and all that. But as I was discussing with Professor Fanning, and when he told me how the poem came to be, I decided to like not shorten it, but like narrow it down to just taking the shots and from Cass Avenue. So all the shots were just walking up and down Cass Avenue in like 30-degree weather for 2 hours to make sure I get all the right perfect shots. And I like that it came together all right. And yeah.
Fantastic. Now, Marcus, can you talk about your interpretation of Jim's piece? And how did you time it to get this great Christmas Eve snow? Was that a challenge to get that sort of look? Not in Michigan. I mean, you could have gotten it today. I think you could have probably shot it this morning.
Luckily, I did shoot it back in January or February, so I was prepared, and I had all that prepared because I knew I needed that. I actually had everything filmed and ready for the original premiere that we had scheduled. So that was nice. That's how I was able to be in a diner and have that footage.
Oh, sorry, Marcus, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, so one of the things I love about this project in general and the concept of combining these two art forms is the opportunity to see how in the adaptation something is transformed and it becomes the film becomes its own new thing. And I love, without exception, I love seeing how that happened in all of the films that you've made. Marcus, in your adaptation of Jim's poem, I felt something really change. And when I say change, I mean that in a transcendent kind of way. Your film becomes something different than Jim's poem. And one of the things where I felt the difference is in Jim's poem, we have a speaker, we've got his friend Kenny, and there's this very felt dynamic between two characters driving around. And in your film, we feel both the presence and the absence of those characters. And we feel the absence particularly because the diner is empty. I mean, we see the diner with all its fixtures, its mustard and its ketchup and its cup of coffee and its stools and its counter and its grill, but we don't see Kenny, we don't see the speaker. And in that absence, we imagine them differently. In the absence, we feel their presence differently than we do in the poem. And I would love to hear maybe both of you. I'd like to hear Jim think about that a little bit, and Marcus, you think about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, one reason I went that route was I really wanted to focus on the sound and having the sound sort of become music in and of itself. Not necessarily through music, but music was a part of it, I think, from music on the jukebox and stuff like that, and music in the diner. And so that's why I removed the presence of people so that we could really focus on listening and sort of having to fill in the gaps. Yeah, anything you want to say, Jim?
Sure. No, I really appreciated the absence of people there, and I agree with what Cindy said too, in terms of just making it something new as opposed to just adding between the words and the sounds and the images, something new gets created. And so, yeah, I really felt transformed and surprised in good ways by what you did with it.
I think there's an unintended effect of it too, and sort of the context we're in right now too. Going back and watching my footage, I had to imagine that that's how the diner looks right now. I mean, a little less alive. I went during while the diner was open, so we got the smoke up from the coffee and the blinking machines and the TVs going, so that it really looked as though there were no people there. But I thought that was an interesting thing as I was preparing it for the live stream tonight.
Another place I noticed that that kind of tension between what the eye sees and what the ear hears. Aileen, it might be, I think it's in yours, Aileen, the River Rouge. There's a line about the wash line, but what we see on the screen is plastic stuck in barbed wire. Is that yours, Aileen?
Yeah, that was mine.
I love that. I love that you don't give us the linear equal. I love that moment. Really admire it.
I had a question come in here to Joe. Joe, they ask, so your film has a dissolve between the mic and the turntable. This person would like to hear about the filming of media technologies. So if you'd speak to that.
Yeah, for me, it was trying to connect, what the DJ is doing with his job, creating a set list and, explaining things and arranging things and then playing them. And then through his voice and in the broadcast media, I was trying to suggest, the sort of mystical nature of that's even possible. You can send music through the air. I'm mystified by that still, like I was when I was a kid. And so I was just trying to, capture something like that with the as pared down as possible, I guess. Reducing it to its basic elements, and hopefully I succeeded in that. But is that?
Yeah, that's great. There's a comment here to David. Jake McGinsky says that he was a student of yours at Grand Rapids Community College in the late 90s, but he missed the film tonight. Any chance I could get a link to rewatch? I won't speak for David or Aileen, but I will say that all the filmmakers that agree to, we will be posting the films on the MSU Film Studies website. So, as soon as folks decide to publish it themselves, we will try to gather them there so that folks can rewatch. And that might take some time, but we will definitely try to provide a spot where folks can check them out a second time, or a third time, or fourth time. Let's see here. Looking back. Okay, we talked a little bit about archival footage. Aileen, can you talk about the use of the Rivera Court murals?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So I was told going into this that was kind of an important part of the behind the scenes of this poem. And then I am a resident of Oakland County, so I can go to the DIA for free. So over spring break, I took a trip home and stopped in there and shot the murals. It was a little bit guerrilla style, just with my camera, trying to avoid all of the many people that come in and out of that space every day. But it's such an important thing. I think if I ever get people who visit Metro Detroit, I'm always like, hey, have you been to the art museum? You see in the murals, they're super cool. It's really kind of iconic part of Detroit, both the art itself and then what the murals are depicting. And so I know I wanted to get that in there. And then it was cool then to find some archival footage that sort of lined up with those murals of the men working in the Rouge plant. And so kind of putting those things together was really cool to kind of, for me at least, they seemed to kind of come alive. And then I chose to end my video also with images from that mural, kind of below the big scenes that everyone kind of recognizes are these kind of smaller scenes that kind of are hidden behind some plants in there, and kind of getting to point those out was something I wanted to do.
I have a follow-up question from Dr. Nealon. Justice wants to know, wants me to ask you about Sheeler's influence on the composition and visual style of your film.
I don't know if there was much. I looked a little bit into the painting and stuff, but it was something that kind of I kept in mind, but I don't think was too much of an influence.
Great. Fabulous. Do any of the poets want to ask any questions to any of the filmmakers? Please feel free to jump in.
But just a maybe a general comment. This is Mike Laughlin, and I appreciate what Norman did with my work. I appreciate all the filmmakers. The intertextuality of this goes very deep. Cindy started us by talking about the news footage and the way that history is incorporated. There's that layer. There's the, obviously this is all about Detroit music, you know, so my poem is an homage to Marion Hayden, and those voices that are under the poems are really key. And then watching that go through yet another medium and another set of eyes and another set of voices was really exciting. I think there's a great deal of openness that's expressed in all of that. The real crucial elements of our culture, like the Rivera mural, like jazz, American jazz, like soul music, keep winding their way through us, and they come out in many different forms. So kudos to the filmmakers and to the instructors for making this opportunity happen.
It's our pleasure. We're just thrilled we got a chance to do it again, and that we got a chance to share it, and that we actually got to premiere these films and in some way gather together and share them together. It's really exciting.
Well, I want to say that I felt really honored to have my poem both selected in the first place by ML and Jim, and then to have it made into a film was wonderful. So that was I feel honored that you did that and grateful.
I'm curious to ML and Jim, what do you feel about first of all, the work that goes into putting the anthology together, but now to see some of these in this different format? Can you just speak to the experience seeing your own work and then the other work in the anthology adapted like this?
Mel? Well, I'll speak to that. I'm not sure if ML is.
First of all, the
Go ahead.
work that goes into putting the anthology together, but now to see some of these in this different format, can you just speak to the experience seeing your own work and then the other work in the anthology adapted like this?
I think what it shows is that is how people, can differently
I'll speak to that. I'm not sure. ML is.
First of all, the work that goes into putting the anthology together, but now to see. ML, you've got the YouTube video open. You want to close the YouTube video and just open up the Zoom window because the YouTube is.
I think what it shows is that is how people,
I'll let ML work that out, and you can maybe you can talk first while ML.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, well, one of the things is it just reminded me of all the great poems that are in there and how they're so evocative that I think the filmmakers really took that and ran with it, just in terms of, the flavor and the connection between the city and the music that we were trying to focus on, and the history of the city and how that informs the music. And so it was all there, particularly with some of the archival footage and some of the more experimental stuff too, in terms of, connecting those different elements that I think all of us, have some connection to Detroit, and it's, it's in here, and I think the films really spoke to that. So it was just a thrill for me to see this and to see the anthology live on in a new, interesting way.
I really value this project, the anthology and Filmetry, and then other projects that are thinking about history. Because when we think about history through a new lens, the lens of poetry or the lens of film, when we think about history through an art form, we're able to come at it from a new angle. And I think to the extent that we can continue to find new angles and new art, new ways of exploring old ideas, that's how we continue to grow and learn from history. And I value this project for that reason too.
And I want to continue to praise the students who, are any of you graduating? Are any of you seniors? Yeah. And so you're in this, like, in the midst of all this wildness, and you did the film, and they did not get any course credit. This is like extracurricular. This is just filmmaking for the spirit of filmmaking. And that is really important, to go beyond just, you know, your assignments and to make films for the joy of creating art. So, and you did it in this time that's like, it's not easy to make a film right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I just want to pat everybody's back once again and say thank you so much for sharing that work with us, and to the poets too, to taking the ride, to allowing the, you know, to being open to what the filmmakers would come up with. That's been really special.
But a note to those seniors, Pete's absolutely right. It is really great that you did this on your own. And I will say that that kind of initiative will serve you well and serve your art well in the future, because there will come a time when you don't have the formal requirement of a deadline or class, an assignment, and you still want to make art, and you can return to this experience and know I can do it without that formal deadline. That, well, you had a deadline for this, but this was your initiative. This was you saying yes to art. So well done.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, no, I behind that completely. I mean, having worked on films, you know, it feels like it's a miracle that any film ever gets made, because it's so complicated in terms of all the different things that have to go to work right to make a film. And in these times, it's like a double miracle that you young filmmakers were able to do this. So kudos to you, and thanks a lot.
I'd like to point out that there are a lot of venues for this sort of thing too. I don't know, I've been making sort of poetic movies for several years now, and there are a lot of places you can get them shown. Magazines, you know, literary magazines publish video editions and things like that. So, you know, I would encourage the young filmmakers to keep going. If you enjoyed this process, it's a great way to express a lot of emotion without having to hire a giant, you know, Hollywood style crew. You can do this kind of thing very easily and have it shown. You know, it doesn't have to just be for you. So keep up the good work.
Do any of the filmmakers or poets want to plug something that's coming up that you're working on that's yet to be released? You want to start hyping us up now?
The third annual Filmetry event. We don't have more information yet, but.
That's right, and it'll be in person next time. Yeah. By golly.
Unless we're quarantined until 2022.
Knock on wood.
No, I think this is really great. I mean, one of the things that I teach at Wayne State is performance art, which is really just this, blending all the different art forms together. And when we start the semester off, I tell them we have a performance at a certain date and time towards the end of the term, and they better do something about that. And they spend then 15 weeks, and we workshop the pieces as they're growing, just like like you would a story or a poem in a class. People critique, give them ideas and that sort of thing. So this is kind of the ultimate example of my performance poetry, performance art workshop. So I'm grateful. Thank you. I think I just touched my face.
No, oh no, oh no. I'm doing it too, ML. I
Oh,
think
good. Let me see
maybe we
Charlie.
could share the hospital bed, you know? Ah.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you all. The project as a concept is cool, right? But it doesn't work without participants. And so to the poets who were generous and patient and willing to live in uncertainty for months before seeing a final product, thank you for that generosity and patience and that willingness to dwell in uncertainty. And to the filmmakers, this was a real investment in time, and to some extent, you know, you were handed something, and then you were willing to work within the constraints of that text, which is sometimes a relief and sometimes a challenge. And thanks for rising to the challenging part of it and participating, because Pete and I we think this project is great, and it doesn't work if we don't have people who also think it's great.
So that seems like a good spot to leave it off. Thank you, everybody, for participating, filmmakers and poets, and thank you to everybody who is watching and who had a chance to celebrate with us. Support Detroit if you can. Donate to that United Way Community Response Fund. Let's bring that energy back to the city that we're all celebrating. So once again, y'all be safe, stay healthy, and thank you for participating. And we'll see you next.
Guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.